Welcome to Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. Africa is yet to come to terms with yet another coup on the continent, this time in Guinea. Soldiers appeared on TV on Sunday afternoon claiming to have dissolved the government, stating rampant corruption, mismanagement and poverty as their reasons. The Defense Ministry, however, insists an attempted takeover had been thwarted by the Presidential Guard. Numerous reports say the coup was led by an elite unit headed by a former legionnaire, Lieutenant Colonel Mamadi Doumbouya. Events are still unfolding and we'll be here to take you through the issues. But this week on the program, we delve into the Tigray crisis in Ethiopia's northern region, a conflict which began in November last year when Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed ordered a military offensive against regional forces in response to an attack on a military base housing government troops. I'll be talking to veteran journalist and political commentator Tamrat Negera. He'll be joining me from Addis Ababa. Also joining me to discuss this is Meaza Gebremedin, a Tigrayan human rights advocate based in Washington, D.C. That's Diplomatic Channel in a wrap. Let's check in on other discussions in diplomatic circles. We'll be right back.
Car nous allons réécrire une constitution ensemble cette fois-ci.
The Nigerian government has condemned the recent coup d'etat in the Republic of Guinea, describing it as a clear violation of the ECOWAS Protocol on Democracy and Good Governance. A statement from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs says the government of Nigeria also strongly condemns and rejects any unconstitutional change of government and calls on those behind the coup to restore constitutional order without delay and protect all lives and property. Guinea's president, Alpha Condé, is believed to be in the custody of the Guinean Special Forces, following what soldiers say is a coup that happened earlier on Sunday. A video later appeared on social media, purportedly showing President Condé in detention. He is seen wearing jeans and a printed shirt and does not have any visible injuries. The leader of the Afghan opposition group resisting Taliban forces in the Panjshir Valley north of Kabul says he welcomes proposals from religious scholars for a negotiated settlement to end the fighting. Head of the National Resistance Front of Afghanistan, Ahmad Massoud, made the announcement on the group's Facebook page. Earlier, Taliban forces said they had fought their way into the provincial capital of Panjshir after securing the surrounding districts. Massoud, who leads the force made up of remnants of regular Afghan army and special forces, as well as local militia fighters, called for a negotiated settlement with the Taliban before the fighting broke out around a week ago. The United Arab Emirates is planning to launch 50 new economic initiatives to boost the country's competitiveness and attract $150 billion in foreign direct investment in the next 9 years. The projects, a few of which were unveiled on Sunday, include investing in technology and creating new visas to attract residents and skilled workers.
I want to bring in Meaza Gebremedin, a human rights advocate based in Washington, D.C. She's also Tigrayan. Welcome, Meaza, and thank you for joining me on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you so much for having me here today.
Let's begin with how you remember the crisis in Tigray starting.
Sure. So the ongoing genocidal war in Tigray started long before November 4. This is a genocidal war that was waged against the people of Tigray, our culture and identity, by Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, as well as the Eritrean dictator Isaias Afwerki and Amhara expansionist elites. This war was waged against the people of Tigray because these three main actors do not see a future for their narrow political narrative in Ethiopia in the presence of strong ethnic minorities like the people of Tigray, who take great amount of pride in their advocacy towards an inclusive Ethiopia, an Ethiopia that gives equal rights to all nation and nationalities in the country, and that assures a political arrangement such as the multinational federalism that Ethiopia has been known for the past 27 years, and also a group of people that take great amount of pride in assuring their rights to self-rule and self-determination. So because of this, the current Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, alongside the other actors I mentioned earlier, have been working towards subjugating and exterminating the people of Tigray for over 3 years, not only by blocking roads that connect Tigray to the mainland, Addis Ababa, but also by blocking foreign direct investment that could have gone to Tigray and create job opportunity for Tigrayans. At the same time, by selectively prosecuting Tigrayans in the Ethiopian nation, and also blaming all evils on the Ethiopian people, on the Tigrayan people, and also actively using state media to dehumanize and spread hate amongst the Ethiopian community towards Tigrayans. So because of this, there has been a very hostile environment for Tigrayans for the past 3 years. And to make matters worse, on November 4th, the Ethiopian Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed waged a genocidal war on the people of Tigray by inviting Eritrean troops, as well as drones that were sponsored by United Arab Emirates and Somali troops. Because of that, you see a very saddening humanitarian crisis that is unfolding now, claiming the lives of thousands and thousands of Tigrayans.
You've described the ongoing fighting as a genocide. You honestly believe that the Ethiopian government wants to wipe out the people of Tigray alongside the rebels?
Yes, with absolute certainty. Not only the actions that are being witnessed on the ground, but also the intentions of the Ethiopian government have been quite clear about the genocidal nature of what's happening. The Ethiopian government actually did very little to hide their intentions of wiping out the entire ethnic Tigrayans. In his visit to Tigray, the European envoy Finland's foreign minister, he told the UN and the EU in his parliamentary address that the Ethiopian government officials have actually told him that they have intentions to wipe out Tigrayans for the coming 100 years. So this is not something only Tigrayans are talking about, but also something that has been documented and witnessed by international actors such as the Finland's foreign minister. So what's happening is a genocide, because genocide is nothing but the intentional and purposeful destruction of an entire ethnic group. And Tigrayans have been subjected to such kind of activities through systemic starvation and weaponized rape, as well as destruction of all resources that were very beneficial to the survival of Tigrayans.
Now, the Tigrayan forces do claim to have also attacked the Ethiopian military, and they've accused the Eritrean forces also of killing, Tigrayans. But the government has denied this, saying it's only been targeting, the rebels. What are you hearing from, those on the ground about what exactly is going on? As I understand, there's very little communication coming out of Tigray.
Yeah, so because of the communication blackout that was sanctioned by the Ethiopian federal government, there hasn't been enough flow of information. However, international journalists as well as international aid workers were able to document testimonies of the genocide survivors that are currently either in the refugee camps in Sudan or also in different camps that are sheltering internally displaced people across Tigray. So the survivors have told us time and again that they were raped by Eritrean as well as Ethiopian troops and Amhara militias. They have told us how these forces of evil have actually destroyed their livelihood. They have burned crops. They have massacred innocent civilians, not only in their homes but also in place of worship. They have destroyed mosques. They have destroyed churches. So what's happening on the ground is quite harrowing. People are being targeted everywhere. At the same time, there is just a new report documenting the harrowing reality in the western Tigray parts of Humura, how bodies were tied and they were tied their hands and they were massacred after that, and the bodies were fled to Sudan. So what's happening is really, really saddening. And the most really disheartening thing is that the international community is aware of what's happening on the ground. They know who's doing what, but they're not taking concrete steps towards ending the ongoing genocide. And in a way, they're emboldening the genocidal forces to continue committing war crimes and crimes against humanity upon the people of Tigray.
You've mentioned the international community. The UN has been advocating, for aid to get to Tigray. They say the Ethiopian military forces are blocking the only route leading to Tigray at the moment. But the African Union, which Tigray forces have said they do not trust, has already named former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo as AU High Representative for the Horn of Africa. He'll be resuming in, I think, a couple of weeks. What sort of perspective and solution do you think he could bring to what's currently going on?
The African Union has clearly taken sides with the Ethiopian government, and they have been, basically amplifying the propaganda that was being used by the Ethiopian government. They even called what's happening to the people of Tigray as a law and order enforcement rather than calling it for what it is, as a genocide. So I actually am not surprised if the Tigray government has a hesitation in believing or trusting the African Union. However, I want to make clear that His Excellency Obasanjo can do right by the people of Tigray, not only by taking the initiative, but also by calling out the African Union for all the mistakes that they have committed when it comes to the people of Tigray. I am not surprised, but I want to highlight how we're having this discussion at the backdrop of a very dire humanitarian crisis. People in Tigray do not have access to humanitarian aid because the Ethiopian government, alongside the expansionist Amhara elites, have blocked the road that connects Tigray to the rest of the country, and that could have been used as a corridor to deliver a life-saving humanitarian aid. Since August 20, there hasn't been a single truck that entered into Tigray with humanitarian aid. People in Tigray are not dying only of, the war planes and the drones, but also because of starvation and because of lack of medicine. So I want to make sure that we're having this discussion about peace and negotiation at the backdrop of people dying of starvation, of a man-made famine.
You do understand that there is, violence being committed on both sides, by both sides, committed by both sides, beg your pardon. You do have the Ethiopian military forces, which you rightly point out are supposedly killing innocent Tigrayans in the Tigray region, but you also have the rebels who are killing, Tigray military forces. If I'm understanding what you're saying, Tigrayans want to be autonomous. Is that the point?
Tigrayans want to have their right self-determination respected. That is a constitutional right that people have fought for and paid with blood and flesh. So they want this right to be respected. We want to be administrated by a government that we voted for and that we elected. We do not want an Ethiopia that imposes leadership upon us. That's not democracy. So this is the only thing we want. But with regards to allegations of the Tigray Defense Forces committing war crimes that the Ethiopian forces, as well as the Amhara militia and Eritreans, have been known for, I think the track record of the Tigray Defense Forces speaks for itself. The Tigray Defense Forces to date have been a very disciplined and well-mannered defense forces that do not really commit war crimes, that put the interest of civilians at the heart of their action. But if there are any allegations, the Tigray government and the people have been willing and are ready to work with any international organization that is interested in going to the ground and having an independent investigation that would look into any allegations of war crimes and that will bring about justice. So I want to make sure that the international community understands that the Tigray people and their defense forces alongside their government are willing and ready to work with the international community to bring light to any allegations of war crimes.
Well, it's been 10 months, I think, since you last heard from home. Are you reaching out to family members? Are you able to speak to them and find out how they're doing? I understand that this might be, quite hard for you, not being able to contact people at home as much as you can. So how has that been like for you?
I, alongside so many other Tigrayans in the diaspora, haven't heard from my family members that are currently in Tigray. And this is mainly because the Ethiopian forces, as well as their cronies, have blocked our communication channels. There are no phones, there is no internet in Tigray. And it's mainly because, all the public infrastructure has been destroyed because the Ethiopian government wants to hide all the war crimes and crimes against humanity that they have been committing against our people. So I do not know if my family members have been raped by one of the invading forces. I do not know if they have fallen victim to the massacres that have been apparent everywhere across Tigray. I do not know if they are starving to death or if they are, dying because lack of medication. So as somebody who is in the developed part of the world, someone who can actually do something to help my family, But because of the blockade, I cannot do anything. I just have to wait, sit, and hope that my family survive all of this horrific reality. So it makes me feel helpless. But at the same time, I recognize that this is not just about my family members, it's about our collective identity as Tigrayans. And I hope and I pray that the international community summons all the necessary political will to intervene and do what's right to save innocent people that are suffering at the hands of genocidal forces.
Yeah, as our prayers and thoughts are also with you and with the people of Tigray at this time. No one wants to see another humanitarian crisis, especially in Ethiopia. Thanks again for joining me on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you for having me.
Coming up after the break is my discussion with veteran journalist and political commentator Tamrat Negera. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're still discussing the ongoing crisis in Ethiopia's Tigray region. Earlier, I spoke to human rights advocate Meaza Gebremedin about her perspective on how it started and what solutions there are for the region. Now I have joining me veteran journalist and political commentator Tamrat Negera. He's the founder of Waka Media. He's lived and studied in exile until reform in Ethiopia led by Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed. Tamrat, thank you for joining me on the program.
Thank you for having me as well, Amarachi.
Do you think the government of Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed bears some responsibility in the ongoing conflict, which is leading to the humanitarian crisis brewing in Tigray region?
I think if there is any responsibility that Prime Minister Abiy should bear, it's the fact he gave TPLF and its supporters a great latitude, which is contrary to the very nature of TPLF, which never had settled disputes, internal or external, without violence. It deviated from its Marxist, from the very beginning, it always had a Marxist ideology that forces beliefs in settling conflicts, political conflicts, rather than through debate, through violence. You know, TPLF was not the first Tigrayan political organization to operate in Tigray. So TPLF always managed to settle political differences with violence rather than negotiations or deliberations. But Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed, who was also a member of EPRDF, which was founded by TPLF, gave them over 2 years by sending elders, religious leaders, known Ethiopian elders, including famous athlete of Haile Gebrselassie. But TPLF never intended to solve its internal difference with Prime Minister Abiy and other political parties of its own, but it chose to start by violence, as it has been doing. And on November 4th, they attacked the Northern Command, which was protecting Ethiopia and primarily Tigrayans from Eritrea. The Northern Command, which has been in Tigray for over 20 years, including Prime Minister Abiy himself, when he was in the army 20 years ago, he was in the Northern Command. He was a member of Northern Command. His brother died in serving Ethiopia in that same command. So the TPLF attacked the Northern Command, took heavy artilleries and other weapons, started firing rockets at Asmara and Bahar Dar, Ethiopian cities like Bahar Dar, because they believed that in short term, they will overturn the Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed's government. And because of this, we are now in this kind of crisis. So to answer your first question, if there is any responsibility at Prime Minister Abiy, it's the fact he didn't understand TPLF's nature at the core, that they never want to solve or believe in solving problems through dialogue. That's my take.
What would you say about the reports about atrocities committed by Ethiopian and Eritrean forces? There have been reports of rape and the killing of innocent civilians in Tigray region, apart from, the other part of the violence which you mentioned, which is the attack by the TPLF on the Ethiopian forces.
So wherever there is war, we know our atrocities of gross humanitarian catastrophic level atrocities could happen. What we can tell, what for evidence, is that the Ethiopian government has taken measures by investigations by the district attorney or our attorney general, and then also the court martial. The government has been willing to accept investigations by the Independent Human Rights Commission. The government has accepted an investigation by the Human Rights Commission in cooperation with African Human Rights Council, African Union Human Rights Commission. Now, what we have seen is TPLF also commits crimes, but the international media, specifically the Western media, has been reporting every crime only on one side, especially on the Ethiopian side as well.
Tigrayans have accused the AU of already taking sides. They believe that the African Union is backing the Ethiopian government. Do you think the resumption of or the intervention by former Nigerian President Olusegun Obasanjo, who's just been named AU's High Representative for the Horn of Africa, will help bring some perspective to the crisis and perhaps a solution to ending the fighting?
As you know, President Olusegun Obasanjo is one of the living great statesmen of Africa, and he is probably one of the few African leaders who could understand the situation and would be capable of mediating anyone anywhere. So Ethiopia, as a founding member of OAU and as a sitting place of AU, I expect to welcome President Olusegun Obasanjo. Especially, I expect Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed to welcome him and discuss with him on the matters. The Ethiopian position has always been that this is an internal affairs, and Ethiopia will not accept any kind of intervention from abroad. But AU is no ordinary organization, and Olusegun Obasanjo is no ordinary foreigner. So, as a African, Ethiopia should actually accept Olusegun Obasanjo and the African Union mission. But I'm seeing some, not only just me, but Ethiopians are seeing some troubling signs that Olusegun Obasanjo, His Excellency, has been talking to Samantha Power, has been talking to Mr. Jeffrey Feltman, who is United States America's special envoy to Horn of Africa. The reason I see this as a troubling sign is I hope His Excellency Mr. Obasanjo will make sure that his position, his mission is independent of the United States or the Europeans or their allies, because they have proven to be very interested in ousting Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and the government of Ethiopia and handing it over to TPLF. If His Excellency Mr. Obasanjo comes with the perception that he is being manipulated by Westerners, his mission will die from the get-go. So the best way he could be a mediator is by actually proving his independence and saying to Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed and rest of Ethiopians that he's just here representing Africa. And I expect that to happen to make sure that his involvement is untainted. But the situation on ground is that the Ethiopian government is not willing to talk to TPLF. But at some time in the future, some sort of Tigrayan elites should be incorporated into the coming government of Ethiopia. So even if Mr. Obasanjo will not be able to talk to TPLF and Prime Minister Abiy Ahmed or the Ethiopian government, he should be, and I expect him to be able to settle the end of this conflict in a manner that would satisfy all parties. That's my thing.
Tamirat, thank you again. It's been a real pleasure speaking with you on Diplomatic Channel.
Thank you very much.
And this is where we end the program this week. Don't forget, you can watch it again on youtube.com diplomatic.com/channels web. Just go to the playlist and search for Diplomatic Channel. I'm Amarachi Ubani. I'll see you next time.